Hello, this is Brian Houle. I'm a solutions consultant with Beyond 20, and in this video, I'm going to look at how tasks work on the incident object in Cherwell Service Management. Tasks act sort of like sub-tickets, and they can be associated with incidents, service requests, change requests, problems, pretty much just about any major business object in the system can have tasks associated with it. Right here we're looking at a service request that has been put through to set up a new employee. Now this is a classic example of the kind of service request that would benefit from having tasks associated with it. So just a couple of notes on how Cherwell handles ticketing and ownership. So Cherwell, out of the box, works on an ownership model. So you'll see over here in this owned by, the idea is that this service request to the customer is for onboarding a new employee. The employee who's requesting this, in this case Claire Wu, she just wants to get the employee onboarding. That's the service that she's looking for. She doesn't really care about all the pieces that go into onboarding. She just wants to know that she's got a new employee coming in, Emily Johnson, and this employee needs to be up to speed when she starts her job. So that means a couple things. She's going to need an office, she's going to need a computer, she's going to need access to the network, and she's going to need email, among other things. So rather than Claire Wu having to know that and submit tickets for all these individual pieces, the service that you as the IT service provider would be providing here is understanding the workflow behind an onboarding request and then kind of packaging all that work behind the scenes so that Claire Wu can consume the service of onboarding. So that's kind of a lot of talk, but let's take a look at this and then see what exactly I mean. So if you look down at the tabs down here, I have a tasks tab and it says I have 7 tasks open. This task bar is pretty cool. I can move the separator up manually if I want to get these bigger, right? I can move it down if I want to see more of the ticket. I can also double click it and it should give me a view of the content. So let's have a look at our 7 open tasks. So these are color coded. They're red because they're in new status and they don't yet have an owner. So here I'm going to acquire a laptop. I'm going to unbox a PC and tag it. I'm going to create an AD account. I'm going to provide an email account. I'm going to prep the PC. I'm going to set up the desk and deliver equipment. So there's a lot of things happening here, and what's interesting is that these could all be happening by different business units within your organization, right? So I see some procurement tasks, perhaps. I see some IT tasks. I see even perhaps some physical facilities tasks. And maybe some logistics tasks. So, acquiring a laptop, that might be a procurement situation. It might come from stock. It might be buying a new PC. Unboxing and putting on an asset tag. That's IT. It could also be your asset folks within IT. Creating AD accounts and email accounts. That's usually your networking and exchange folks, perhaps. And then setting up a desk, that could be physical facilities. Somebody has to, find the furniture and set it up. So a lot of different people having input into this one service request. So let's have a look at an individual task and then we'll see what kinds of things we can do with that. So now we can look at the task in this little window on the tab, but what I like to do is I'm going to click this blue arrow and that's going to pop the task up and make it the current record. And you'll see that the task record has some very similar features to the ticket. We have a life cycle on our task. We have an ID and a status, and we have ownership. So that's kind of the key thing, is that while one group can own the whole ticket, and this is commonly the service desk, right? If a service desk is in your organization is the single point of contact, then ITIL suggests that they own the ticket from start to finish and task out individual work so that the customer can call the service desk and speak to one person rather than be bounced around trying to figure out where this request is in its life cycle. So in this case, acquiring a laptop belongs to third level support. And then somebody in that team can come along and take ownership of it and work it through its life cycle. So we'll look at that life cycle in just a second. I just kind of want to go down through our I want to's here. These are our operations or actions we can take. So we can take ownership of it. We can view detailed time information. Date time information, excuse me. And these are very similar to what's on an incident ticket. So I can see, for example, when it was created, when it was modified, etc., etc. Looks just like that. I have this option to add this to an Outlook calendar. So if I click this, what it's going to do, it's going to ask me to take ownership of it before adding it to my calendar. So I can go ahead and do that. Actually, you know what I'll do? Is I will click take ownership. And now I own it. I can select a team if I'm on. I'm going to say I'm on third level support, of course. So now I own this record. And if I click add to my Outlook calendar, it's going to select a due date. Now, the reason why it's prompting me to select a due date is because I don't have a due date on the ticket, and it needs that. So if this task is due on a particular date, let's say it's due next week at 8 a.m., and I'll just go in here and I'll change my time to 8 a.m. I'll click OK. And then what it's going to do, and I'm on a VM, so I don't have it here, is it creates an ICS calendar file. And then if I were on a local machine, I could open that up and it would just pop into my Outlook. And the fun thing about this is it will launch an actual Outlook calendar item for you for this task. So here I have acquire a laptop, the particular date and time, and then we have the actual subject from the title and the description here. And so, I mean, that's pretty much it. So you can pull that into your Outlook and have that task be there for you. In terms of what it outputs, as you can see, it outputs an ICS file, and that is basically a text file with some basic information in it. So if you ever needed to modify this one step, it's very easy to do. But long and short, I click this and I can add it to my Outlook. Very fun. Now, one of the things about tasks is that sometimes one task needs to be done before another. And so if that's the case, we have what's called a dependency. And what we want to be able to do is to say, well, you cannot start this task until this other task is finished. And so in this case, acquiring a laptop, that's our first step. I'm going to go back to our ticket. So I just click the back, and it's just like a web browser. It'll take me to the screen I was last on, and here we are back at our tasks. Now you notice my task has changed color because it now has an owner, so that red warning has gone away because it's saying, hey, there is an owner here. We don't have to be worried that this is not being seen to. So one example of a dependency might be that in order to provide an email account, we need to have an AD account for the specific user. So we can go ahead and manually create a dependency here. So we can say that I need to link provide email account to an upstream task, which is going to be this one, 10173. I'm sorry, rather 10172. So we have to create an AD account before we can provide an email account. So on 10173, which is my email account task, I'm going to click link to an upstream task, and I'm going to go ahead and select 10172. So if I click this selector, I can actually pick it from all the tasks that are currently on this ticket. So I'll click OK. And now a couple of things have changed. You'll notice over here we have dependency has not been met. That means I can no longer advance this in status. You'll notice my little status link has vanished. So this, I can't really do anything with this until create AD account has been completed. So if I click this link, it tells me what that upstream account is. Upstream task is, which is to create an AD account. So now you can see that I've got a dependency. And I did this manually, but through one steps, you can automate that sort of dependency creation so that if we wanted this whole string of tasks to appear on a ticket every time we had an onboarding classification for it, well, we can automate that, and we can automate those dependencies as long as we know what that workflow is. So let's go back and I'll look at create AD account one more time. So it could be that this depends on creating an AD account. So the email account depends on the AD account, but it could be that we can't prep the PC also until we create an AD account. At which point, we might say that we need to create an AD account as a dependency for prep PC. So last time we clicked link to an upstream task. This time I'm going to go to create AD account and do it a different way. I'm going to add a downstream task. So we're doing the same thing, we're just doing it in the different direction. So if I click add a downstream task, what it's saying here is that it wants a new task title. So in this case, I could say, well, I need to create login credentials or add this person to a particular group in AD or something like that, which I can't do until I create an AD account. So here we can say, add user to appropriate group. Click OK, and I'm going to save. And you'll see that it created another task for me with a dependency on it. So what's cool here is we can start with a single task and then add new dependencies to it. So what I'm going to do here is go back to my prep PC, and I'm going to link it to an upstream task. I'm going to link it to create AD account. Click OK. OK, so now this one also has a dependency. So I'm going to go back to my create AD account again and take a look at all the work that I've just done. So I'm going to go to task again, click my blue button, my blue arrow button, and if you notice over here I have visualize task dependency flow. If I click this, what it does is it creates a visualization for me, and it shows me all the tasks that are dependent on this one. So if I hover over it, I'll get a little bit more information about the particular task represented by this node. So as you can see, we have all that available to us. And so what we can do here is very cleverly create a visualization of our workflow. This can be, screenshotted and published, even printed to provide documentation, whatever, of the system. It's very cool. But the trick is you have to kind of understand your workflow before you can automate it. And that's usually where most people have most trouble is actually kind of conceptualizing what your workflow is. But once you have it and once you've automated it in Cherwell, you have a nice little way to visualize and to publish it. Very cool. And then you'll also notice that I've got a tab down here on the task itself that has all the downstream tasks related to this particular task. I also have a tab for the request. That's the parent request. And of course I can click my go to button if I want to go back to that one. Now, so we've talked about dependencies. We've talked about the Outlook calendar. There's other things that we can do with tasks as well. Including walking them through their life cycle. So I can, this task is at new. If I take ownership of it, and I'll take my team as third-party support, third level support rather. Save it. When I work through my workflow, if I acknowledge this task, what I'm really saying to anybody looking at ticket 102205 is that I have seen this task, I'm aware of its existence, but I have not yet perhaps started working on it yet. Once I set it in progress, this means that yes, the task is being worked on. And if I go back to my original ticket, you can see that I've got my little hourglass icon, which is telling me that it is now being worked on, so that if I've got ownership of one of these downstream tasks, well, guess what? I can kind of get a sense of when this is going to happen. Finally, and I can do my status changes right from the tab. I don't have to make the task the current record. At this point, I can click close when I'm done, and it'll prompt me for a close code for this task. And a close code is really just for reporting. What is the state? Is it completed, declined, reassigned, withdrawn? In this case, I'll say it's completed. We'll talk about these other ones for in a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So my task is now closed, and you'll see that this is kind of grayed out. But if we look at our other dependent tasks, you can see that I can now begin work. So I can provide my email account, I can prep my PC, I can add users to the appropriate group because the AD account has been created. All right, very cool. So let's, I'm going to pick up this provide email account task for a second. So if I come along, I can take ownership of this guy, as I've done. Level 3 support. I'm going to save it. I don't have a default team on this particular account. That's why I'm setting it manually. Otherwise, normally when I click take ownership, it would assign it to my default team. At this point, I have these two operations up here. I can decline this task, which is probably something you really shouldn't do very often, because it's not like you're going to be assigned frivolous tasks. But that can happen. So, but it may be that this person perhaps is going to be in a job where they don't have email, or not supposed to have email, but we still have it here as because 90% of people do. At this point, we can decline the task, and basically it just closes out, and it will close as declined. That's a quick way of just saying bye-bye to that task, because you'll notice that we cannot delete tasks once they're created. That's purposeful. That's for auditing. But if we close it as declined, that gives us some information without removing it from the record altogether. So if I want to go to prep PC now, it could be that I'm not going to decline this one, but I might want to reassign this one. So I'm going to go ahead and take ownership again, and it could be that this was perhaps assigned to me by mistake. It could be perhaps we're overworked, and on this particular ticket we're getting some support from another team. So at this point, what I can do is I can say I've taken ownership of this, but I'm going to I have an emergency. I'm going to be out. I need to reassign this to the guy who said he would help me. So at this point, I can click reassign this task, and what it'll do is it'll say reassigning this task will close it and unlink all dependents. So remember that piece where we said we don't delete tasks, but we do want to keep an audit trail. This is part of the audit trail, so we're not going to necessarily simply change the owner here. We're actually going to close this task and create a copy of it assigned to the new person. That way it can be seen that, yeah, I originally got it, but now it's gone off to this other person. It's for auditing and visibility and transparency. So I'll click OK, and now it's asking me to choose a team, and this is the new team to reassign it to. So I'm going to choose second level support, and you'll notice that it has created a new prep PC task, but the old prep PC task is grayed out and closed, and it is closed, reassigned, and the completion details tell us that it was reassigned. Easy peasy. And then if you look at the prep PC one, that was the newly created one, you'll notice that not only does it have a new task ID because it is a completely separate task, but it also is marked with its dependency here. And that is how we reassign a task. Now you notice it just went to a team, not an individual owner. So that's generally how tasks work. You know, you go to task goes to a team. At that point, either individuals will pick up tasks as they come up in a queue, perhaps on a dashboard, or other teams might want to have the team manager act as a queue manager of sorts and assign individual tasks to people. This is customizable. That reassign link is really a just a one step, and that can be modified. But that's how it works out of the box. Now, before we wrap up, there's just a couple of items I want to take a look at here on the task form itself. So if I'm going to kind of just change my view here. I'm going to change it to form view. So now I'm looking at one task at a time. The whole form is taking up the whole tab, and I have a record selector, and I can kind of go between one record and another rather than going through the grid. Over here, I've got a filter box. I can drop this down, and I can filter if I want to. This gives me a full text search, and I can just kind of go through and do a rather broad open search. Couple more controls on this form that we haven't talked about. So title is obvious. Type. So in Cherwell, there are three types of tasks. One is a work item. The other is time entry, and finally the other one is escalation. So a work item is just what we were looking at. It is an item of work that we want to track. We want to have some visibility and transparency into. But the other type is time entry. That functions a little differently. So if we go back to our ticket, it could be, and we look at the I want to section, it could be that rather than have sort of predefined tasks, we might want somebody to, when they close out a ticket, to say, all right, all these things have already happened on this ticket, and this is how the time breakdown goes. So in other words, again, instead of predefining our tasks, what we're really saying is, all right, I've got a ticket here, and this is how the work went. So it's sort of after the fact. And to talk about this, I've created a new ticket here, and I'm going to look at this track time. So this is actually going to be another employee support ticket. This time it's an office move. So we're going to say that we need to track all these things for this office move after the fact. And this is useful for those requests that are common enough, but which may have ad hoc components to them, or they're not quite as standardized as a regular employee onboarding is. So this might be a good example. Might be some sort of facilities project, or some other thing where there's a lot of time to it, and we want to add some granularity. So what we'll do is we'll use this track time link on the ticket under I want to. So you notice I have no tasks here, but if I click track time, what it's going to do is it's going to ask me how much time was spent, and this is to be in hours. So I'll say I spent 2 hours, setting up cubicle walls, right? And click OK. And what it does is it creates a task, automatically closes it out, but gives me this track time spent checkbox of 2 hours. And it completes it out, and it just tells me what I did. And the description is a time tracking entry from incident 102272. And so I can keep going like that and just say, I need to track time. And you'll notice it says 2 hours logged. So I can click that again, and I can say, I had another 3 hours of, perhaps dropping network cable. Click OK. And you'll notice too that it's assigning it to me. And again, if I had a default team, it would show up here. But so it's a quick and dirty way to kind of do a bit of time logging on a ticket without too much muss and fuss and without any customization. So we're tracking hours, we're using them as tasks. We haven't created a custom object, and it's a very useful way to use Cherwell out of the box. Now, the third type on our tasks, we looked at work items, we looked at time entry, is escalation. So I want to talk a bit about that. we're going to look at our third type of task, which is an escalation task. And if you look on a ticket, you'll see that it has escalate to level 2. And again, this escalation path can be defined based on classification. But if we don't happen to have an escalation path predefined, well, what we can do is we can click escalate to level 2. It'll enter the reason. So why are we escalating it? Need assistance with new device. We will click OK. And you'll notice here that it now created a task. It's escalated, and it's been predefined to go to second level support. So, your service desk folks don't need to have committed to memory how to escalate or where to escalate a particular classification of ticket. It's already built in, and they can just click escalate to level 2. Now, there's a third, level 3 escalation possible, and they can, if this doesn't work, they can click that again. Click OK, and it will create yet another escalation task. And so you see we have level 2 and level 3 escalations, and to whomever these are assigned, whatever team, any dashboard that they have showing current tasks, these escalation tasks will show there. So it kind of just gets folded in with their regular work. So that is the final sort of piece to this. So just to review, we've looked at tasks. We've looked at what tasks are, which are sort of like sub-tickets to other major business objects for the purpose of creating additional visibility into work. We can use them to track time. We can use them to escalate. And we can use them also to create dependencies.